And welcome back. And indeed, a great look at that transition of the oil and gas industry and what's going on in North America. Excuse me. So, a very fascinating conversation there led by Halima Croft. And I think there was just some great points to pick up on. Let me see if Arthur is around and we can pick up on them both together and
Yeah, I'm here right
really
now.
have a look there. But I loved that sort of closing chat there. That it is we have the capability to shape the future of energy, and there was almost a call to action out there, Arthur, to the key players at the moment. It's there for the taking. Do it right, do it sensibly, do it strategically. But we want to accelerate this energy transition without losing value. We all have to be looking at a low carbon future. But it's about really, and I loved it. There were words like be creative, be strategic, and make it, own it.
Yeah, no, I agree. I think one of the key phrases was that what the pandemic has done and the demand destruction that came with that was that it gives you a window into the future. It has accelerated the thinking of the oil and gas industry in North America to think about the rapid changes it's going to have to make to enable the transition for the future. It's not without its challenges, as we heard, but it nevertheless is something, as you said in your opening, Mark, they're going to have to embrace and they can take a lead on. But I thought it was also interesting to get some views with regard to the regulation and the regulator's role within this. In other words, working with industry, we have to think about the end state of that existing infrastructure and how that's going to transition to the new.
And I think we're hearing that, Arthur, around the world, and particularly to hear this in the US at the moment too. And I think there's a bit of agreement that Europe is probably ahead of the game. But I suppose there's such uncertainty in America at the moment because it's an election year, and quite honestly, what regulation is in place this week might change, could change, probably will change if there's somebody else in power there. And again, it's all going to be looked at. So at the moment, I don't think they can commit to what's happening. But interesting that it doesn't matter if it is developed market, developing market, emerging markets. Everybody is looking for that. I think the signposts from the governments, from the policymakers, from regulation, because the key players want to make those investments, but they really need to be clear where they're going to go.
I agree, and I think regardless of who gets elected in a month's time, or we hope in a month's time, the ESG agenda is not going away. And I think we heard it near the end, which is that a better narrative has to come from the oil and gas industry. And it's not a better narrative just to kind of greenwash your way through the next 6 to 9 months. It's a better narrative because it needs to attract a new generation of talent to be able to work in this industry. It's a better narrative because actually this transition to the new is probably one of the most exciting industry agendas that we're going to embrace over the next 10 years. And we want that talent, one, to be motivated by that journey, but also to be part of it. And unless they do a better job, regardless who gets elected in a month's time against that ESG agenda, retelling their story, then I think they've got some hard times ahead. So I thought that was a good call out for the industry and why that's necessary regardless of what happens.
Indeed it was. And I think one of the other things they talked about too, one of the colleagues brought it up, talking about how technologically advanced this industry always has been. And again, it probably comes back to maybe they've never told the story well, because when you think of it, as he said, there was a time when there was no deep sea drilling and exploration. There was a time when there was no fracking. The development of technology and the creativity that is in this industry. Now it's been asked to be a cleaner, greener industry, a different industry to pivot again. But they're well able to do it, and they've been doing it forever. But I suppose it's just a lot more visible now. And again, I think everybody's beginning to realize how important this industry, particularly energy, is to the future of our lives, basically.
Yes, and I think we heard this phrase from Mike, 8 is the new 25. When we talk about this technology cycle that we're now on. And I do think it's, you know, one of the great untold stories really is around the way in which technology with a big T has been embraced by the oil and gas industry forever. It always amazes me in terms of the way in which that's being used, the way in which innovation is flowing through. We hear all about innovation in other industries. Very rarely do we hear about it in this industry. Now, clearly, that has been often associated with the extraction of hydrocarbons, and not everyone thinks a hydrocarbon is the right word or the right way forward. And so I think it's got to be balanced. It's got to be the leverage of technology to enable cleaner hydrocarbons to be extracted. And we heard that from the colleague from Canada talking about how in the oil sands industry they're now using solar as part of their extraction capability. So this is a good story that tells basically of carbon abatement in different ways, and I do think that's really important for the industry to highlight how basically 8 will be the new 25, but highlight how it will be used in the transition to the new normal over the course of the next 10 to 20 years.
No. So it's important to keep an eye on that focus. But again, you know, saying I think particularly that the US industry at the minute and the North American industry, they're probably a bit short of capital there. And everyone's been so cautious in terms of delivering those funds, and they're just checking everything. And it's not the easy money that used to be there for the oil and gas industry particularly.
No, it isn't, Etna, and I think you know the market capitalization of the supers has been one of these stories. It relates to me because my old organization before I retired was Accenture, and recently Accenture's market capitalization was higher than that of ExxonMobil. I mean, I can't tell you how kind of fundamentally jarring that is for me, having worked in the oil and gas industry all of my life. But it's a demonstration that actually the sentiment isn't necessarily there in terms of where capital is flowing as far as the oil and gas industry is concerned. And even, you know, BP was used as an example there. Even though an organization like a BP or an Equinor or a Repsol or a Total have done a much better job of repositioning their strategy, their pivot to the new is definitely been articulated. But again, look at the share price, look at the way the capital markets are still uncertain about, is the adequate return on investment actually going to happen within these organizations as they transition to the new? Now, we perhaps believe it will be, but I think the story is there. But have the capital markets been convinced? Not as of today.
Absolutely not. And I think we see there that, you know, BP took a brave step. I think everybody sees that, but the market doesn't like uncertainty. So it's willing to, I think, wait. And, you know, we all hope that BP, their strategy will be rewarded. But unfortunately, the immediate reaction is they've got to suffer and go through that and really prove that that's what they want to do. But, you know, what a great day we've had. What a great 2 days here. You've been very, very busy in the last few days. And I just think this morning we just looked back. We had looking at Asia Pacific, the Startup Innovation Masterclass was just so interesting. And again, big call for action there. The role of grids in the energy transition, looking at the Africa supply market. What a great interview today with Pavel Levinsky from Rosetti, the energy trilemma. Now we looked at the US, and we're almost closing up the day. We still have a few things to talk about, Arthur, though.
No, I agree, Etna, and I think it's been a great day. And I think, again, it's been a day of different altitudes, as I would call it. The altitude first thing, and it was first thing when you started, certainly for me in the UK, at 7 o'clock this morning, but listening to the New Zealand study about Asia Pacific, about the challenge that there are 300,000 combustion engine cars that are imported, or vehicles, should I say, imported every year, and the challenge of moving to the new with regard to that transportation fleet. I like stories like that because it takes us out of the ethereal. We can say energy transition and the move to new technology, 825, etc. You know, they're great phrases, but, you know, actually bringing it down to how do you actually put policy in place to move your 300,000 imports of new and secondhand cars such that they move to the new, that's a different challenge. So I think we've heard aspects of that. I think the other thing that we heard today, which I thought was important, was the role of carbon pricing. that was kind of alluded to in the Asia Pacific session and a little bit afterwards. But I think this is an important point because it will act as an incentive to move to the new. Essentially, if there is no price on carbon, then it's going to be very difficult for us to think about incentivizing the consumer. Humanizing energy can only happen if that carbon price is recognized in some way. So there are a few things like that that I felt were useful. And I thought also that the fantastic session that we had from Sergey talking about the prosumer. Again, this is a new development within our energy system, within the energy grid. And I do think, again, it will be a critical component of the World Energy Council's agenda to think about how the prosumer will be leveraged and the emergence of that in the development of microgrids as we go forward over the forthcoming years.
It's a very dynamic market at the moment, and to hear so much that's going on. And I think to see also, which the energy trilemma I think brought up, is that we can all learn from each other. And I think it's sort of about time, and it's good to hear that people are they're pulling back from reinventing the wheel, so to speak. Again, they're just they're learning from each other, and that's a good sign. But let's talk about the World Energy Congress. I mean, all eyes are heading to Russia, and we're just by then we hope we'll be booking flights. What do you think? Are you ready, Arthur?
Yeah, I think we're very excited. The Congress happens every 3 years. It is, the moment for a lot of the energy industry in its broadest context. Again, 2022 will be in St. Petersburg, fingers crossed, so that we can, again, network, connect, and also hear about the developments from all the different components of the energy system. And again, as we had yesterday, what happens now in the process is that various cities or countries obviously want to bring the Congress to their particular city. Yesterday we heard from Lisbon in Portugal, and I believe we're now going to switch across to hear the case for Rotterdam. And again, as part of the agenda, this will now take place after this. I think, Etna, and from our point of view, there's not much more for us to be doing today, I don't think.
Well, one thing I suppose we have to do is keep an eye out for tomorrow, because you're going to be back busy again tomorrow. And so why don't you just bring us through a little preview to see what's coming up tomorrow?
Yeah, no, delighted. Yes, no, I have a day tomorrow. Sergey is going to kick the day off. And obviously the highlight tomorrow, the big highlight, is the interview that he's doing with Minister Novak from the Russian Federation. Again, Russia plays a critical part in the energy system today, and obviously with the emergence of OPEC Plus, the decisions that Russia takes have a huge impact with regard to where we are, where markets are, and the signals that it gives to the market. So I can't wait for that particular interview as we go forward, and I do think it will be very interesting to get some feedback from that session over the course of the next few years. I think the other aspect is that we've talked about investing in new energy. And tomorrow we get a perspective, one of our regional perspectives will be from Europe. And again, obviously a number of our commentators today have alluded to the fact that they view the Europe or the EU as taking a lead in some of the ways it's putting policy in place to drive the new energy agenda. So it'll be very, very interesting to get the perspective of the panel on that tomorrow.
Indeed, it will. And I'm going to get to just watch tomorrow. I'm not back joining you and Sergey, but I'm wishing you the best of luck for another very successful day. So all in all, a great week, a really, really great week when we look at it all. And that's World Energy Week. Keep an eye on the social media out there. Everybody, thank you so much for joining us. Arthur, thank you so much for being here. And it's always good to do our tag team. We enjoy doing that, and it's been great fun. It's great. We're learning so much more every day. I mean, I sit here and just listen, and it's a good time. It's a healthy time in the industry, even though I think it's a difficult time. But when we look at the potential that's out there and we look to the long term, I think it's an industry that will always remain and probably even become even more important than it is today. So that's all there is for me to say. I want to thank everybody for being with us. Stay tuned, stay in touch with World Energy Council. And from Arthur and myself, I bid you good evening and be sure to be back tomorrow.